In the Know, a radio program talking to the newsmakers in Ogle, Lee, DeKalb counties and beyond, keeping you in the know. Here's your host, Charles Van Horn.
Good morning and happy Sunday. Another edition of In the Know, and in the studio, Liz Hiemstra, Executive Director of the Ogle County Economic Development Corporation. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Glad to have you here now. Obviously, a long name. Maybe people aren't too familiar with what the Ogle County Economic Development Corporation is, and we'll describe that coming up as to what the organization does. But first, Liz, started in the role earlier this year, right?
Yes. End of July was my first official duty was actually to meet with Congressman Darren LaHood at a community leaders a meeting. So that was kind of get thrown right in, but it went well, and I've been kind of on a pretty positive trajectory
there you
since,
go.
I think.
Jumping in feet first. And now, obviously, this has a lot to do with contacts, making connections, and utilizing resources in the area and bringing attention to those to people, not only regionally, but across the country. How did you get your start in not only economic development, but really community relations?
So I would say that my primary start was more in community relations. I've lived in Oregon since I was about 10, left for college, came back, actually worked for a nonprofit for a while in Rockford. But about 10 years ago, I got more interested in the growth and health of my community. I actually attended some sessions that then led to a nonprofit called Oregon Together. We did some things around beautification, downtown, economic development type stuff, community events and all that. And so I just my heart was in that then since, that point 10 years ago. And so that nonprofit since dissolved. And then a couple years ago, I just kind of realized that I wanted to be more involved in my community. And so I did let some community leaders know that was my intention, to kind of use my skills and some of my networking to make a difference in the community. And so if anything ever came up, that allowed for that, to please let me know. And so this position came available earlier this year. And so they let me know, and I interviewed, and I thankfully got the position.
The Ogle County Economic Development Corporation has been around for a bit, and in a nutshell, describe what the OCEDC, that's how I'll refer to it from now on, what the OCEDC does, not really on a daily basis, because that's not really a fair comparison. This is more of a month-over-month type role. Right,
or a year-over-year, or years over years is what, is what I tell myself and others as we go forward. There's definitely some small wins that are on the horizon, in the near future, but there are some things that we just know are going to take, years and years to develop. But basically, there's kind of a cycle that I see with economic development, and that includes like quality of life. You want the people who already live here to enjoy living here. You want to create the right business conditions for businesses established and new to grow and flourish, and then thereby attracting hopefully more people to the area who appreciate the quality of life that we've established in the region. So I see it as economic development can touch a lot of different things, because there's a quality of life aspect, and there's also, the business aspect of it as well.
And you talked about, small wins on the horizon and, of course, big wins. When people think of an economic development corporation, I suppose maybe people think that you guys are out there every day pounding the pavement for that mega industry, that large factory, that large, airport, that big project to come to the area. But it's little projects, too, because sometimes you're just looking to fill holes in a community.
Absolutely. And so the communities that I serve in Ogle County have different strengths and weaknesses, and opportunities and such. So I look at each community in town as their own individual, set of needs and potential and all of those things. And so all of our communities do have some spots that could be like pretty quickly filled with things like retail or like restaurants and stuff like that. And so those are kind of like those small, granular, on the ground things that affect quality of life and also offer those amenities as we kind of build that structure. But yeah, there's also the long game of creating the business environment for these larger projects.
And that really comes down to the reason why the communities are involved in this is you want a tax base first off. You want to be able to
Right.
tax, which it's just so crazy to think about that, businesses exist and you want the business to succeed, but you also want the people who work in the businesses to buy homes in the community,
Yes.
to pay taxes on the homes that maybe need to be built, and the business itself to generate either sales tax or at least property tax revenue for the Ogle County entity, and to help you guys out, again, with your goal of expanding. With the economy the way it is, we know everything is sort of in flux. Prices are outlandish at times. What I have seen, and this is just me saying this, what I have seen is there is economic growth in a bunch of different sectors, maybe not all in Ogle County. One that is growing and one that there's a lot of pushback on, well, there's two of them really. It's data centers and solar. And those seem to be the really, the hot thing right now. Yet there's pushback on those. Now, where does that leave you guys at? Because obviously you're looking at anytime there's an installation or somebody willing to invest in a community, you're thinking to yourself, that's a win for the community and the tax base. But the other side of the coin, the residents maybe don't want that type of economic investment in the area. How do you balance that?
Sure, and it's a balancing act when we're looking at these potential big, solar panels, or like you said, the data centers or whatever. And I would say that my primary goal is to ensure that our community, not that everybody's happy because you're never going to make everybody happy, but they're at least informed as to why these particular projects make sense. And so I think there's differences between the type of things that different corporations or companies will come in and try and do. And so each project is not the same. So educating the community on why this particular solar installation could possibly be less impactful to the community than this one, right on the edge of town where you can see it versus this one that's kind of farther out that you can't see. And then also showing, that it is increasing our tax base and our income. And so that goes to the schools and that lowers your property tax bills. And so really we have to, there's no, like I said, not everybody's going to be happy. We have to all kind of seek that balance.
One thing I have to note too is it's got to be a relief to see Constellation putting the money and the investment into keeping that facility active clearly for the next 80 years. Because, 80 to 100 years. With that, the stuff they're buying, they're putting in there. They're not doing it for a cup of coffee. That's going to be there a long time.
Absolutely.
And that's got to be a bit of a relief to you because there's so many ancillary things around Constellation and what they do in and around Byron and Oregon that makes life easier, I suppose, for you a little bit, knowing that there is an economic powerhouse in the middle of the county that is committed to being there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we know that their tax money helps out Byron schools and it helps out Oregon Park District and it provides jobs and it provides, when they have outage, it comes in and it supplements like our hotel and tourism dollars and stuff like that. And so, it's, 5 or 6 years ago when it was a potential that they were going to shut down, you can just kind of sense the panic. I wasn't in this position, obviously, but you can just kind of sense the panic of what that would mean to our whole economy. The rural areas struggle because all of these industries have kind of left. Mount Morris had a paper plant, and in the digital age, the paper, plant isn't necessarily the most sought after industry. And so to hang on to these big ones that we have, it's crucial. And so business retention, not that I go to ComEd or to Constellation and say, please stay.
Yeah.
But all these other industries that are in the area, you got to make sure that they're happy and they got what they need. And so, hanging on to what you got is incredibly important.
Now, you talked about the different communities that you've partnered with and are partner with in the OCEDC. They are all, I guess I want to say, different children in a dysfunctional family sometimes, right? Because every community has different goals, as you said, different forms of leadership, and different sort of mental attitudes among each civic body as to what they envision the future of the town. Now, obviously, you can't name names, but there's got to be times when you've maybe had some of these meetings, because again, a lot of this stuff isn't transparent, because when you're dealing with economic things, you can't really put out there what businesses are looking for what, because there's not only is there privacy involved, but if you start talking too much, the company will get scared, run away, or the prices will go up on the property they're interested in if somebody finds out. So there's a whole lot of levels of why you have to be a little bit working in the shadows on this. But it's got to be frustrating at times when you have an idea for a community or something that could be an iron in the fire, and the community is just totally against it. And you just have to be like, this could go down the road to somebody else, and you'll be kicking yourselves in a decade.
Yeah, so only being about 4 months in, I haven't had so many like big presentations where I'm like pushing it to the community. But there have been some suggestions that I've made to some of the community and community leaders that haven't had a resounding yes at it. So I just kind of try to plant those seeds, and hope that they grow into something, and kind of do my due diligence and my research to try and make those things more appealing or. But I can definitely picture some of these things happening. I know, with the big thing with solar, we haven't had a data center proposal here in my. So just to be clear, I don't cover Rochelle, and so I cover everybody else. But we haven't had a data center proposal in there. But I know that there's been a lot of pushback on solar at the county level. And so that's a pool that I need to dive into in the future. And kind of help, I think, like I said, kind of balance those pros and cons and get that information. And
the reality of a data center is the technology of scale is they are massive now. We know that technology only shrinks in size and energy use. Mm-hmm. So the day is coming when these things are going to be 1/3 the size they need to be.
Right.
And I think that same holds true with solar. I think that solar fields are a certain size now. They will need to be upgraded. We've seen the same thing with the wind installations in Lee County and neighboring regions, where the turbines go up and they come down in 10 years because they're not as efficient as the newer ones. Right. And really, energy is one of the factors. Again, Constellation is here. So energy in the equation, if you have somebody who's looking for a high electricity demand location, Ogle County probably has those opportunities available. Sure. But there's certainly water concerns and workforce concerns, manpower and education levels in the community. Like, what are some of the things that, if you are a major industry, a factory looking to hire 150 people and move to Ogle County, I don't know if you've had those conversations yet with somebody who's been sniffing around looking for a place to be, but what are some of the questions that some of these major places are looking for answers to? And what do communities and residents really have to step up and do to attract some of these major employers to the area?
Sure. So I would say that the inquiries that we've gotten about any sort of like industrial, it's a lot of infrastructure. Do you have, the wastewater? Do you have the water? Do you have the electricity? Do you have the gas? And the answer in most cases is yes. We have our utilities do a great job. Our communities have been very forward thinking in their infrastructure, and so their water and their sewer and all that. So there's the capacity for some of these bigger industrial projects to come through. I would say in a community level, I think that in Ogle County, our people are our greatest asset. We have, the small town charm, the Midwest closeness, and all of those great things. And so I think I would just ask the communities to be open-minded when something comes through. And we want to know, we want to hear people's opinions, and we want to know, what people are willing to accept in their communities. But I would just say that to just be open-minded about kind of some things that are coming through. And then on the quality of life and the amenities end, part of what I'm working for, and we kind of talked about filling in some gaps in the communities, is trying to find that like entrepreneurial base. I would love to see more people coming out and wanting to start business, whether it be retail or restaurants. Like, we can use more of that. There's opportunities there for people to step up, and if they have a dream or they have a goal and want to be a business owner, there's plenty of resources out there. And Sauk Valley College has a great small business development center. They have great workforce development, and so I've been starting to work more closely with them to kind of develop the workforce and the business acumen to really grow multiple different kinds of businesses.
Liz Hiemstra, Ogle County Economic Development Corporation Executive Director, joining us this morning. One last thing real quick. You talk about irons in the fire. If you come back a year from now, What's one thing you can make your psychic prediction on? What's one thing you could just tip of the hat and just be like, this is what we've done in a year. Where do you think you'll be in a year?
I think the downtowns of all of these communities are going to be more vibrant. I can't say how much more vibrant, but that is something that's kind of like the low-hanging fruit that I see that we can kind of set the groundwork for and really push for. I think there are, hopefully they're listening, those entrepreneurs and those business owners that want to either grow or expand or start. And so I would say downtowns thriving and vibrant.
And vibrant is going to be pretty easy to do if you just hang new Christmas lights.
Yes,
you can do it that way too. Liz Hiemstra, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this week's In the Know. The program returns next week at this time with another great conversation with someone from your community.